welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my sewing room. Today is Friday, March 4th, 2022. And today I just thought this video should be like, what have I been up to video. So I have a lot of things to show and tell, just show you what's been happening here in my sewing room and talk about different projects that I've been doing. And I just thought I better film because a lot of you have been commenting. You're so nice about you know, what are you doing? What have you been up to? We haven't seen you. Hope everything's okay, because I haven't been filming as normally I do every Friday, just because I've been so busy. So everything is okay, but I've been crazy busy. So I thought maybe today I would show you what I've been up to and some of the reasons why I've been so crazy busy. So, you know, I'm always have things going on and, you know, designing different things and sew-alongs and those kind of things. So I thought I would update you on those. But the main thing that I've been doing is, so if you follow my channel, you've been following my Sew Your Stash series. So I have announced, about 6 weeks ago, we announced that most of those videos, those quilts that I've been working on, are going into a book. So I have a new book coming out. It's coming out in July. It's called Scrappiness is Happiness. And like I say, a lot of the quilts from the Sew Your Stash series will be in the book. And then, you know, there's a lot more too. But we just finished the photo shoot here. So the photo shoots take place here in my home. And so I don't have any quilts to show you because now I've shipped them all back to Texas, which is It's Sew Emma, or my book publishers, and so they get all of the flat shots done of the quilts so we can put those in the book. So all of that is almost ready to go to print so that we can have the book out in July. But I was, you know, finishing up quilts, binding, designs, patterns, getting everything ready for the photo shoot. And so that's what we did here. You saw in front of the video, in front of this video, you saw a little slideshow that Cass put together of some of the photos from the photo shoot. But this is kind of a mock-up. Before we get the book done, this is kind of a mock-up. This is even a mock-up of the front cover. But there's just a lot of scrappy quilts in it. It's going to be over 200 pages. And I mean, of course, it looks different from even now, but I can just kind of flip through. It's my typical style of my books. Let's see, over 200 pages. 32 quilts. It's going to be spiral bound, you know, like all my quilting books are. And also, part of those 32 quilts, 6 of them are going to be the quilts that were in my original Scrappy Project Planner. So that's why I have these here. I have a lot of you asking about my Scrappy Project Planner that I did a long time ago with It's Sew Emma. And it was actually a weekly and monthly planner. Okay, and I've shown this and talked to you about it before in my scrapbooking tutorial. So, but what was in here was actually tips and organization, scrappy patterns. There were 6 scrappy patterns. So now those same 6 patterns that were in here are going to be in this book. And there's also still going to be the tips and organization, and it's going to have all of my, you know, section for notes and things like that. And it has all of the things like the charts that I had, all of my shortcut methods, all of the charts, like how many squares, how many 2.5 squares you can get out of a fat quarter, how many 1.5 inch squares, you know, all of that kind of thing. Sizes of quilts, all that kind of thing. The only thing it does not have in it in this book is, you know, just the weekly and monthly pages. And that is why I have these here, because that's what I have here. I have my weekly and monthly pages here in my planner. And then this is my companion binder that I've done tutorials for here on my channel about how this just keeps my schedule and my notes and keeps me going, you know, does my word of the year, all that kind of stuff. But then in here is where I have all my different categories, what, you know, quilting and crochet and cross stitch, all that kind of stuff, so that I can really put projects in here. So that is kind of, what I wanted to address this a little bit so that you know, because this is no longer available. It hasn't been available for a long time, because once the calendar is filled out and everything, then all you have left is just the quilt projects. And so I wanted to separate those and do a planner separate from the actual quilt patterns. And so that's what that is about. And I think I've told you everything I can with that. It is on pre-order. And so I'll leave a link for that. And I'll also wanted to show you about this. Speaking of pre-ordering, when you pre-order my book, I always usually do some kind of a giveaway when you pre-order, when I do a great big book such as this. And so what I'm going to be doing is something that I'm working on now. And of course, this will be in a pattern form. And it's going to be a free pattern that when you pre-order my book, that you get this as a free pattern. Now, it will come out as a pattern afterwards, you know, for sale. But this is called Scrappy Spools. This is something that I designed, this quilt, a long time ago when we were doing the Scrappy Project Planner. And when we were planning for that, we couldn't put it in here because it takes up so many pages of instruction, because there's actually 16 different blocks. And it just takes a lot of pages for instructions. And so I have saved it until now so that we can put it out with my Scrappiness is Happiness book. So I just thought I'd give you a little sneak peek and tell you about the free pattern that's coming with it. So again, it's called Scrappy Spools. The quilt will be 72 by 90. You can make that bigger or smaller by just adding more blocks or taking them away. It has 16 block patterns, as I've said before, but the quilt has 63 blocks total. So you can choose which blocks, you know, you make several of, but there's 16 different little scrappy patchwork blocks that you sew into a spool, which is called Scrappy Spools. That's why it's, you know, called that. So I'm going to be using this fabric for all of the spools. And this is one of my bee basics. I'm going to be using this as a bee background for all of the background of the spools. Let me just slide this one in. Can you see both of those? Okay. And so this is going to be the background for all the spools. This doesn't mean you have to do it. I'm just show and telling this, so I'm just going to explain what I'm doing. So then there will be sashings between the blocks. And this is another bee background, and I'm going to be using this for the sashings because I love how these two go together. And then I'll just use scrappy squares for the cornerstones. But I'm just giving you a little sneak peek of some of the blocks. I have not sewn. I've been working on these a little at a time in between getting ready for photography and all of the other stuff I'm doing. And so there are 63 blocks, and this is how, I haven't even counted how many I've sewn. But these are 8-inch blocks, and so I have 3 of them here in spools. So you can see that one. And so this is just a traditional scrappy block log cabin, okay? So these are 5-inch blocks. All the little blocks that are for the thread and then are 5 inches. And then when you finish it, it'll be 8 inches. But here's another one, just to give you an idea. And so these are all made by using just my scrappy strip baskets that I've talked about in my Sew Your Stash series. And you know, also that method will be printed in the book of how I save my scraps. You know, I'll leave a link to that here again in this video, but I've done that here on my channel several times about my system. And so that will all be detailed in the book as well. And so I've just made a bunch of 5-inch blocks. So I'll just kind of uncover these and show you. So some of them are more intricate than others, but what I was trying to say before is all of them will just use every size that I save my scraps in strips and squares in, which is, oh, let's flip this. I'll probably have the whole thing going that way. So my scrap sizes are 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, 5, and 7-inch. So those are the sizes that I save in. And then from all of those strips, you can subcut. So I'm just doing a quick little, so some of them are more intricate than others. Sometimes I just do a 4 patch. and flying geese, you know, just like little checkerboard blocks, just fun things that all will be a spool. So like the stripes, like I'll have it going this way, you know, to kind of look like thread, which I've done several patterns like that before in the past. And I've done a lot of spool patterns, but I really wanted to do a spool pattern that you can just really dig into all your little scraps, and they don't really, you don't have to plan a lot on matching or anything. I mean, that one was planned, obviously, because I used a green background and a darker green square and a lighter green, but that didn't take much planning. I just grabbed greens. So they're, you know, it's pretty simple. And I didn't use, so for all of these blocks, because there's a light background to go around the spool, then the backgrounds that I used in all of the blocks are a color so that it would look solid. So that's just kind of reminded me when I saw that heart. So I'm not using my bee backgrounds for the backgrounds in these blocks. I'm just using all fabrics. And if I do use a background color, then it's within the block like this. But that just kind of gives you an idea of what that will look like sewn into a spool. Cute. And here we, you know, like I said, some are 4 patches, stars. And these are not all of the blocks. These are just the ones I have sewn so far. So there's still some block designs that you haven't seen in here. And you can just pick which ones that you want to make multiples of, you know, to make up your quilt, because that's kind of what I like to do. I like to give you a basic pattern and you can do it exactly how I do, or I like to give you ideas to be creative and think outside of the block and be the boss of your own quilt and go ahead and make it your own. And so there's that. And this is so fun to sew these because I just grab my baskets and I just cut right away, and it's fun to just not really plan, just kind of throw them together. And for instance, when I'm doing something like my star, I just pull this background fabric and I know I'm going to use a yellow. And so then I know that I don't pull squares that are yellow because I want it to show up here. And so then I'll just throw my squares down on top of this yellow background that I've chosen first, and then make sure that all these show up on that. And then that's what I'll use to make this. And I did the same thing, obviously, just with the pink. And so it's going to be really fun. And there's also going to be a sew along for the book, and that's going to be exciting too. So look for that in July. Now, speaking of scraps and bundles, I've had a lot of you comment when I do my series that I'm a new quilter and I don't have a lot of scraps, or you know, things like that. So we decided, let me pull this in. Here, I'll take that lid off. It's kind of shiny. This is my little cookbook container. You see the sides of that? That's my cookbook tin, project tin. So these are 40 different fat quarters of my fabrics, and this is what we're calling the Scrappy Starter Bundle. And you can also get this on my publisher's website. And it's not one collection of fabric. They're all my fabrics, but there's just, I just chose a few colors so that you kind of have a little bit of every color that what I work with here. So I don't know, there's probably 4 or 5 different collections in here, kind of all mixed up, that I chose. 40 fat quarters. And again, it's the Scrappy Starter Bundle. And I know I've talked about that before, but I wanted to show you actually what it looks like. So I can leave a link to that as well. And even if you do have a big stash, like I'm obviously going to use this just because this is my palette and this is what I use, and these are all my happy colors. And so I just have them folded up in here so that I can show you, but I'll be cutting these into strips and squares and putting them into my baskets. And if you want a sneak peek of the quilts, probably about 6 weeks ago when we announced the book, I did a live stream on the Fat Quarter Shop channel with Kimberly. I was her guest, and there was a question and answer, and she had some of the quilts to sneak peek right over there in Texas, and I have some of the quilts here. And we talk about a lot of things and show a lot of the quilts and talk more about the book and things like that. So I'll leave that link if you want to go look at those sneak peeks of some of the quilts in the books. And also the book trailer, we always do a trailer, kind of like a movie trailer. You know, we do a book trailer that shows you a few things in there too. And so I'll leave a link for that book trailer so that you can look at that. And so I'm pretty excited about my new book. That's what's been occupying a lot of my time. I've been working on this book for a long time, 3 years actually. And I'm super happy that it's ready, and I'm super excited for July. So we'll be doing a lot of scrappy sewing then. And all right, so the next thing I'm going to be talking about is my chicken salad sew along. And so I'm going to clear this out, bring some other things in, and I'll be right back. Okie doke. All right, so I'm just going to show you what I've been doing with the chicken salad sew along, kind of as a recap. So the sew along takes place on my blog every Monday. So except for week 1, I always do a YouTube tutorial. So on that week 1 YouTube tutorial, you can find the link to the Be Prepared post. You can find the link to week 2 and week 3. And because week 4 is coming up, then I'll add that link. So, you know, it's easy to find my blog, but for your convenience, all you have to do is click on the links that I've left you. But if you don't have a link to click on, all you have to do is Google Bee in My Bonnet or chicken salad sew along, Bee in My Bonnet, and they come right up. Or you can even specify what week that you want to look at, and it comes right up. So again, once again, Google is your best friend, and I do love to add links to make it easy for you. And some of you are asking me, where's the links? They don't understand where the links is. So if you're new to YouTube, it's super easy to find the links. You just look below the video, and there's also a little description. There's always like a title or a little description underneath my videos. And then I'm always writing more, but they only show a few sentences. And so right after that, you'll see some little words that say show more with a little arrow. All you have to do is click on the show more arrow, and then you'll see the whole list of links and descriptions and cutting, you know, for some of the videos, instructions, just things that you need to know. So that's always a good thing to know if you're new to my channel or new to YouTube. And, you know, that works the same on everybody's videos, not just mine. So, okay, let's get back to chicken salad. So here's my binder for the chicken salad sew along. This is what the quilt looks like. And we are into week 3 right now, and week 4 will start on Monday. We're using my cookbook fabric. Here's just a 10-inch stacker just to kind of flip through. These are all, you know, vintage kitchen prints. And I love this collection. We've been having a great time doing it. So I'll just do kind of a show and tell for those of you who are maybe not doing it, or just a recap. So this is week 1. This is Penny. And then for week 2, this is Percy. For week 3, this is Pearl. Excuse me. And then I'll give you a little sneaky peeky because, you know, I have to work ahead. So this is Cornelius for week 4. So that'll be on my blog on Monday. Now, for those of you who are doing both quilts, or maybe only just not doing the applique quilt, or doing a piece quilt, we're also during this sew along using my 2 Farm Girl vintage books and doing some 12-inch kitchen themed blocks. And on my blog, I always show, it's a surprise, but I always show which ones we are, you know, that I did for that week. And so I'm using 2 quilts, 2 quilt kits to make 2 quilts, but they're the exact same kit, meaning they are identical kits, but I'm using 2. So this is the Farm Girl block that we did for week 1, and this is Kettles On, and this is a 12-inch block out of my first Farm Girl vintage book. And then for week 2, we did Pie Cherries. This is the 12-inch block out of my first Farm Girl vintage book as well. This is one we're doing this week, the piece block. This is the 12-inch Baked with Love. And this is in my Farm Girl Vintage 2 book. And I'll give you a sneak peek of the piece block that I'll be showing Monday on my blog. We're going to be doing Fresh Pears, the 12-inch Fresh Pears block, and it is in my first Farm Girl Vintage book. So super excited to be doing both quilts. I love kitchen quilts and I love vintage kitchen fabric, so that's why I'm super excited about this collection and working with cookbook and playing with cookbook. And speaking of the two quilts, I wanted to show you these. These are the backings came in. These are my wide backs. I have 3 of them, but I only have 2 here because I have these cut for the back of my quilt. So I'll be using this one for the back of my chicken quilt, the applique chicken quilt. And I designed these to look like vintage tablecloths, and I just love how they turned out. They're 108 inches wide. Perfect, so you don't have to piece your backs. And then this one I'll be using for the back of the kitchen quilt with all of the kitchen piece blocks. And so those are in, the wide back typically comes after the fabric anyway, but not so close, not so long after is what I'm saying. But you know how shipping is going nowadays, so I'm happy that they're back in here. So that's another thing that's been keeping me occupied, obviously, is my chicken salad so long, and I'm loving how that's going. And also, let's see, the next thing, let me pull this in. What I've been working on little by little is my stocking quilt. Okay, so this is something that I did in one of my remix series. I believe this was in the September one last year, number 8. So my remix series are when I take my Sew Simple shapes. I always design a quilt for my Sew Simple shapes, meaning just like the chicken salad one you saw. But I don't want my shapes to be like a one-hit wonder, meaning you just make that quilt and then you don't use the shapes anymore. I wanted to show you there's so many possibilities of different things that you can use with just one of the shapes from one of the sets, or you can combine a lot of the shapes together and do things. And so I started a remix series and last year, and this one happens to be just one shape and that we're using in September. And this is from my Vintage Housewife set, and we're using the stocking Sew Simple shape. So I'll link to this tutorial again in case this is the first time that you've seen this, but I'm using the linen fabric for the background. And when I say linen, this is actual linen. It's not linen that you cross stitch on. It's linen fabric like that you would make clothing with, or tablecloths or things like that. And it's from Riley Blake Designs, and I just love it. You can kind of see the, you know, how kind of soft it is just by me holding it up kind of like that, and how it would drape. But I have used this natural linen. They have, I think Riley Blake has like so far 5 or 6 colors. I'm not sure, but I use the natural quite a bit. And so that's what I'm using for this. And here's my some of my little stockings that I have sewn with my Sew Simple shapes. And I'm just using scraps for this like I always do. I'm making a big quilt. Like I want it to be big. I want to put this in my trailer in the fall, or I want to be able to put it, you know, over the sofa or something like that. But I'm calling this a fall quilt because, you know, in the wintertime, I live in Utah here. And so in the fall and in the wintertime is when you have all your, you get out your stockings, your warm stockings and things like that. But then once I put it out for fall, I can keep it out for winter. It can turn into a Christmas quilt as well. And, or I can hang it in my laundry room, or, you know, I just love making these stockings just out of scraps. And so I wanted to show you that I have several of these appliqued because I'm doing machine applique. So you can see how I'm doing these, just not with a zigzag like I sometimes do, but this is what I call straight stitch machine applique. I'll show you on this one because it's dark fabric so you can see it. And all I do is I start there and back stitch kind of in that place because it's, you know, inconspicuous. And then I just sew all the way around the edge. And I don't want to, you know, get too far into the applique. I still want to sew on the edge, but I want a nice little kind of like an 1/8 inch or a little bit smaller edge so it looks nice. and then I'll trim these blocks up after and sew them together. But these are the large size stockings, and all of the blocks are going to be longer, meaning so the large blocks are going to be longer, and these are going to be medium, and then these are going to be a shorter length, but they're all going to be the same width. And so I'm going to sew them together in rows, you know, like this, like vertical rows. And I talk about that in the tutorial, but I just kind of wanted to show you that I have a lot of blocks done, and show you the applique and talk about that so that you could see kind of what that looks like. And so it's very fast, and not all quilts lend to this style of applique, but a lot of them do. And I think especially like whimsical, colorful quilts especially do. And so, so that's what they look like, kind of mid applique. So I've been sewing on this a little bit at a time here and there, because I really want to get this quilt done for fall. And so that means it's a lot of blocks that I need to do, because, you know, they're small blocks. So I'll keep showing you my progress as I go along with that. So that's another thing that's been keeping me occupied. But I pulled this quilt in because this is another quilt that I did way back when I did my Autumn Love Sew Along. Okay, this is kind of folded up, so I can fold it and unfold it. But I wanted to show this to you because back then when I was doing my sew-alongs with my Sew Simple Shapes, I always had a bonus project to go along with the main project that we were doing, because, you know, I just kind of like to do that. For some reason, I always like to have spin-off projects for all of my things, because I just get too many ideas. So I always like to share them with you. But now I basically am doing spin-off projects for my sew-alongs in my Sew Simple Shapes Remix series. So what this one was from my Autumn Love Shapes set. This is called Fall Flower Pots. And I did this, let's see, I put my notes down here so I wouldn't forget to tell you the date. But I did this clear back in November of 2018 on my blog. And so if you want to find the tutorial for this, yes, I will leave a link, but just so you know, it's called Fall Flower Pots, and it was in November, and we used my Autumn Love fabric, and all you would have to do is Google search Fall Flower Pots Be in My Bonnet, and this would come right up, the tutorial. But I did a step-by-step tutorial on how to do this, and I wanted to bring this in and show you for two reasons, because this is another quilt that I did, see, with this kind of applique. Just the straight applique, and I wanted to show you what it looks like after it's quilted when you do that. I love the dimension that it adds. And the other reason I want to show you is because I actually used the Riley Blake Natural Linen for the background of this as well. And I just love how that looks. And so once I did all these flower pots, maybe just unfold it so you don't have to, so you can kind of see different ones. I just did, well, that probably doesn't work. Let's do it this way. You know, I just did several flower pots, and then they're offset, and I did these in rows like this, just like I'm doing the stockings. So it's kind of similar to that. Then I asked my quilter, Julie Stubbs, she's one of my peeps, she's my good friend, and she quilts these quilts for me. And so we talked about it, and I typically, when I do applique like this, I like to have just a background to stipple around them, but she could have easily just went over the top of them as well. But she just did a straight line stitch on the pots. Maybe you can see it better on that fabric. And she just left these alone. These look like they're quilted. These leaves look like that she has quilted them, and these petals look like, you know, that she's quilted them, but she hasn't. This is just the straight stitch that I did to applique them, okay? So this is the actual quilting, this little stippling behind here, and then these straight lines across here. And then because the flower, let me see, can you see that whole thing in there? Yes, okay. She did this with the flower, just a little spiral thing, and then didn't do anything with these outside petals, and they're stuck securely on there. And I love it, and it washes up nice. And I wanted to show you that I did a scrappy binding on this, which I do a lot of times, which I talk about, and I will show you my formula and how I do that in my Scrappiness is Happiness book in one of the sections. And so I just kind of wanted to show and tell that. And this is a piece from one of the pieces from my Autumn Love collection. This was before I was doing wide back. So I just pieced this print and put it on the back because I loved all the colors in it compared to all these fall flower pots, or like, you know, want to call them mums or whatever you want to call them, fall flowers. So anyway, so I wanted to show you that. And then speaking of applique, some of you have asked about how I'm going to applique these. And I have said this in my blog that I'm probably going to applique these the exact same way that I just showed you. I think this is a whimsical quilt. I think that would be really fun to just go ahead and stitch around each chicken. And so what I'm going to do is probably get about halfway done with these blocks. And how I do that is when I go to applique is I like to have 5 or 6 blocks at least to do, because I will change the thread colors, meaning if I'm going to be using matching thread, which I am. Okay, I forgot to say that. So in the stockings, you notice that I did a neutral. Here, let me grab this stack again. So this is just a neutral thread that I use to kind of match the background, but it shows up, right, on that, and which I like the look of that. And I did the same color of neutral thread, which is the Aurifil. I believe it's the Aurifil 2000. And that's what I used to piece with most of the time. But with my So Simple Shapes, I really like to match the thread to my appliques. It gives it a more finished look. And the stitches just kind of are not supposed to show up. They just kind of blend in. And so I will be using red thread, you know, for this, for this, for this, for anything red. So what I do is I will load red thread in the top thread, just leave my bobbin neutral, like in the 2000 or whatever. And then I'll just go around everything that's red in all of the blocks. And then I'll switch and change to aqua, you know, and then yellow and things like that. And it's just much faster, and I enjoy it better, and not having to switch all the time, like using the same color over and over again. And I've had a few of you ask me about how I choose thread colors for that when I talk about matching thread. So here is my Be Happy Aurifil set. Okay, there's 45 spools in here. There's 27 of the 50 weight, that they're all 100% cotton, and there's 18 of the 80 weight. 80 weight only means that it's thinner, and 50 weight is still thin enough to do applique. I use both of them, but instead of doing one set of each one, we decided to combine them together. And so here's kind of what it looks like. Here, let me put this over here. When it's open, okay, I do a color coding thing here, just kind of like a box of chocolates or a map, so you can see what thread color goes in what, you know, little holder there. So in case you run out, you can replace, or you can put them back into order, just so that even though the thread color is on each spool number, I still like to have them there so that you know where it goes. And I typically just, you know, I have my little scissors here. I always keep a needle minder in here. It's one of my favorites, Bob Ross. And then I keep my applique needles in here, and they kind of fit, and I really like how that closes. And so what I do is when I'm choosing a thread color, I will just take something, and if I don't have an exact match, which you never have an exact match, well, I shouldn't say never, you do a lot, because I've chosen all these threads to match my fabrics as close as Aurifil has them. But say I'm going to be doing this chick, it's like, okay, which yellow do I pick? Do I pick this bright yellow, or do I pick this lighter yellow, or do I pick this darker, you know, gold over here? Like, what do I pick? Well, what I do is I unfold it and I just put it across the top of there. And if it blends in the best, then that's the one I will use. But if I have a choice whether to either go darker than that, because that's what I have in my thread box, or to go lighter, I always choose the lighter choice, because the darker just kind of shows up more. It's a little bit harder to make it look neater. And so I would just choose the darker of that. Now, even for these beaks, you could pick something like that. See, that's, you look at it in here and you're like, these are kind of a gold color, and this is a tan color. But when you pull that out and lay it across there, I think it looks great. And so you just kind of test, and sometimes you can test on a scrap piece or something, so you know what you're going to be using on all of these yellows and that kind of thing. Now for pearl, because this is a neutral color, you could just pick something like that that's just very, very light. It looks, again, it looks like it's tan, and this is more of my pewter color, but it looks pretty good. And so I just kind of choose the lighter color. And this is my typical set, but I do have a prim set. I just wanted to show you, for those of you who don't know, that I do have a prim set that has a little bit, they're not any replicas, they're different, but that has a little bit of more of a pewter tone there. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, and that's kind of what I'm doing now. And this is occupying my time getting ready to applique some of these, so I thought I'd bring those in and talk to you about it. Honestly, this video, I just thought, okay, what have I been working on in the last little bit? I'm just going to pull stuff in and chat with you about it. And so, all right, the next thing I've been doing is I've been continuing crocheting my granny squares. And so I'm going to clear all of this out, and I'm going to bring that in and chat with you about my crochet. All right, let's talk about crochet. I'll show you what I've been doing a little bit. So here's my little tin that you always see me keep my crochet in. And these are my floss flowers. And you can use them for floss, which I do, but I really use them a lot for my yarn, for when I have my little bits of leftover yarn. I need to get a couple of extra and put in here that aren't being used, because I've used all of these up. And then I just wind this amount over the floss flowers. And, you know, then I use them. I can use these up instead of just saying, what am I going to do with this little teeny bit of yarn? I could do it for the first round. And a lot of them, there's enough even to do a second round of a granny square. This is one I have in progress. Just didn't get a chance to put the last row on yet this morning before Cass got here. And it was time to start filming. So maybe I'll put the last row on that while we're chatting in a bit. But anyway, so I just keep my hooks in here. I keep some washi tape in here if I need to. I've got my sticky notes and, you know, a pencil. I've got my stitch markers, my needles. What else is in here? Of course, I always have my lip gloss. Okay, so what else I've got in here too? I've had a lot of questions about this because they're by my sewing machine or in my pin bowl or anything, but these, I love this cute little thing. Okay, this is, notice the little Riley Blake bird on there. These is seam ripper. These are called Cindy's seam rippers. And this is a large size. There's two sizes. First she came out with pink and aqua. And that's kind of like a, I don't know if you'd really call that small, but I guess you would. It's just a smaller size. And now, so there's pink and aqua in that. And then she has red. And here's what the packaging looks like. I brought one out. So these are kind of like a medium to large, meaning there's just more space here. They're just a little bit bigger, but I think they're so cute. And so Cindy is Cindy Cloward, and she's the owner. Her and her husband Brett are the owners of Riley Blake Designs. And so she came up with these, and they're awesome. They're this cute patented little tool that she's been working on for a long time. And this is how I hold them, with this little print right here. And it comes with a little cover, and it's just a cute little seam ripper. So I've had a few of you ask me what these are, and so I want to explain that. And I was crocheting. If you follow me on Instagram, I had my crochet at my meetings this week at Riley Blake, and so Cindy had given me the new sizes, and so I kept them in here thinking I could show you those in case you were wondering. But again, Cindy seam ripper, love them. Okay. So that's what those are. All right. And of course, I've done my crochet tutorial on how to do my granny squares before. This is a 3-round granny square. Let's see, behind me is my yarn wall, so I can just pull these back out. But in that tutorial, I showed you, here's a 2-round, a 3-round, a 4-round, a 5-round, and these are all with my chunky thread. So you can just keep going bigger and bigger and bigger. And in that tutorial, you know, I show you how to do all those. And granny square is something I love, never get tired of. It's the first thing my grandma taught me to crochet, and I, again, never get tired of them. And so I've been working on my blanket, afghan, whatever you want to call it. It's just not a quilt. Just like we don't want to call, as a quilter, you never want to call the quilt a blanket. We don't like that because it's not a blanket, it's a quilt. But when, as far as crocheting goes, they can be blankets or afghans. So this is what I have done so far. I've been continuing to crochet 1 or 2 grannies every morning. Let me put that there and slide that over so I can kind of unfold this. So again, I have a tutorial on how to put these squares together because we are preparing for the granny square along that starts in June, and we're using my chunky thread. Just, well, if you're new, this is my yarn. It's called Chunky Thread, and I like it because it's sort of thinner like thread. It's like a baby weight yarn is what it is. It's 100% cotton, and it's kind of like you can use it. I did use it on gingham in one of my quilts to actually sew and put through a needle and do some chicken scratch or hopscotch quilting on gingham. And so it's thicker than thread, it's chunkier than thread. But so I just called it Chunky Thread just so that we could kind of pay attention to that name, and it calls it out and makes it different. So anyway, so I'm doing 12 rows across. This is the front side. I decided to do the ridge on the back side. I'm doing 12 across, and I've had a lot of people ask how long I'm making it, and so far I'm thinking I'm going to do it 18 long, and after I do 18, if I think I need to, you know, go up to 20 or, you know, 24 or something, then I will. But my plans are kind of to do 18, but I just know that one row is 12 across, and if you want to know how I put my squares together, I've got a tutorial for that. So you know, I can leave that link too. I think this video is going to have a whole list of links that I'm leaving. But what I'm doing is I'm using my linen yarn. Let me pull that out to do the 5th round on. See, so they all consist of 4 rounds like this, a 4 round, and then, well, here's a stack here. So I have these in stacks of 12s. And these are ready to go and add. All of my ends are woven in, and these are ready to go. So then I'll just put these, so there's 12 of these. So I have 6 rows so far here. And so this makes 7. That makes 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So I have enough for 12 rows right now. I just need to grab my linen, which looks like this color, and that's what I'm doing. And when I say linen, it's the color linen. It's actually still 100% yarn. It's not made of linen. And so I wind these, which I've shown you before on my crochet tutorials. I wind these on a vintage yarn winder, and it makes them into this cake. But my skeins come like this. And so another thing I wanted to show you was my new colors that will be here in June, probably end of May, June, in time for the granny square along. I have the prototypes here, and I've been able to crochet. I got a few skeins ahead of time just to okay the colors. I don't know why I keep trying to pull the thread out. There we go. Okay, so this is Leaf. That's a new color. This is Jade. And this is what my yarn comes like. Okay, and this is Terracotta. And these are just like deeper, these two are just deeper shades of colors that I already have. And they just go so nicely in here. And then we've got Raisin, and we've got Pebble. And then this last one right here is Songbird. Okay, so those are my new colors, and I already have those wound up in cakes. Here's my basket. Right? So every morning I crochet. I don't know how much you're gonna be able to see. There's my basket. So I have like at least one of each color of all 26 that I have so far. But with these new colors, when they come in, I'll have 32 colors total. But I have them all wound into cakes, so you can see some are full size, some I've used half of, a lot of, you know, I just use them as I go along making these grannies. And then when I'm almost down to the last of the cake and just have a little bit left, then I will go ahead and wind the leftover on my floss flowers, and I usually work from here to do my first rounds here on my floss flowers, so I use up all of these little bits of yarn. So as I was at, well, let me pull that in because I think I'm gonna add this last round. Oh, so let me tell you about this. So far I have 10 of these skeins wound into cakes. Oh, and look, I've got 4 of these grannies waiting to do enough so that I have, waiting to do 8 more so that I have enough for another row. I always have a little bitty board because I use these to throw all my little yarn ends on. I use my design boards for literally everything I do. Let's face it. Okay, so I had 10 of these originally, and this is what I have left of the 10. So I'm keeping track of how much it takes so that y'all know when it comes time for that. This is what I have left, and I still have to border all of these and then put them all together. So this kind of gives me an idea, but I've started with 10 now total, and so I'll keep y'all updated on that. But when I'm just making a blanket right now, that doesn't mean you have to make a blanket for the granny square along. You can make a pillow, and that's kind of what the granny square along is. I've already shown you how to make it so that you can be making granny squares, just scrappy ones like I do out of all my colors. That's what makes it fun. And then I'll talk about different projects that we can make with them. But obviously, you know, a pillow is kind of like a good starting point. But you can do a blanket too. I'll be doing borders on the blankets and showing you how to do those, and that will be during the granny square along. So that's why I want to get this finished for the granny square along so that I can show you how to do the borders. So that's the info on that. And let's see, what else did I want to tell you? Oh, did you notice that I've got my little granny square charm there and this little one of Cassie's little macrame pulls that she made for me? And so I just want to show you, these are new into the warehouse. So I've got 3 charms. These are my happy charms. I always call them happy charms. And these are the ones that go with my chunky thread. So see, I put a little bee there on the labels, just kind of like to match my chunky thread. And I did this one with the denim outside. And I kind of wanted to do it to kind of match this. This is my tumbler that will be coming. And I'm so excited about that. Look at those fun granny squares across that tumbler. So I can have my drink in there, and I might sneak peek this again. Okay, so this is I have a panel that's coming. Okay, I've got to get some of this out of the way so I can show you. Let me put that over there. I have a panel that's coming to make a bag that you can hold your yarn in, that's like a take-along bag that you can just put several colors in. This one happens to have 12 skeins in it. This is made with my decorator weight fabric from the pattern that I put on the panel. So I've got 12 skeins in there. But because I don't have the panel yet, it's coming, but because I don't have the panel yet, I just use my decorator weight, my Happy Place set, just to make the bag, just to kind of, you know, make sure as a test run, you know, as a pattern tester. So on the panel, it has a bag like this on the panel, and then a little bag that actually has printing and stuff on it. And it says hooked on crochet, and that's for your crochet hooks. But size-wise, I'm so excited to get the panel, and that's coming. This is perfect for your pencils, your crochet hooks, your scissors. I've got my the Bee in My Bonnet sticky notes in there. You know, just whatever you need for your little notions, and then you can keep, like I say, I put 12 skeins in here. I have plenty of room to put granny squares in here. So like when you're making progress, here's 36 granny squares. Plus I can still put the notions pouch back in and zip it up. And it'll use my double zippers, and it will have the zipper on the top with a wider kind of carrying handle. And like I say, like the gusset on the bottom keep having threads stick to everything. Imagine that in a quilting studio, right? Okay, so there's that. And let's see. So I need to, maybe while I'm just chatting about some other things, I will grab, let's see, one of my new colors and just kind of start to add another row. Because when I was at Riley Blake, I didn't have my yarn bowl with me. I just kind of took this tin and a few colors. I just took my bag, and my yarn bowl doesn't fit in my bag. I squeezed my tin in there, but I didn't have a yarn bowl to put my yarn in for when I'm crocheting. But guess what I found out? So we had one of my mugs there. So I do an enamel mug with all of my collections. This one happens to be with my Vintage Happy 2 collection, but I do have a, you know, once they're gone, they're gone. But I do have a new one come out with every collection. So I have a chicken and rooster one that's out right now with cookbook. But I discovered this is perfect for once your yarn, seems like it's taking me forever to explain this, but it was sitting right there. I was like, what am I going to do for my yarn bowl? And so I just threw it in there, and look, that is perfect to spin the yarn. It worked perfect. So it doesn't work unless you've put your yarn into a cake, because obviously, you know, the shape of that, it would just, and my yarn comes off on the outside, not the inside. And so, but let me just work along with this a little bit. I don't even know if you can see this, but you know what? I'm going to put my readers on so that I can. And so I love how it spins and does it. And so whatever I haven't covered about my granny square long and things like that in this video, you guys feel free to ask me any questions. I try to answer all the questions, and I look at every comment, and I appreciate them so much, and I appreciate you subscribing to my channel. And I just really appreciate your support of me and of my designs and of my channel and tutorials and things like that. And I've had fun with all of the things that I've put on the channel so far, and I have big plans to do even more. Of course, I have been cross-stitching too. It's been a couple of months since I've done a floss tube, so next Friday I'm going to be doing a floss tube. So I'll be showing you that. And let's see, what else have I been up to? I'm always up to a lot. I'm always drawing and, you know, doing my planner and things like that, but I can't show you everything, but I'm trying to show you a lot of things that I can, that I'm doing now. And back to thanking you for your support of my channel. And I super appreciate it. And again, please ask me questions if I haven't explained the answer in the video already. I'll really try to answer that. And anyway, see how that works? It just spins off. I really didn't even have to pull a lot of yarn out. It just kind of spins and pulls. I kind of wanted to put it under the camera to kind of give you an idea, give you a little action shot. And see, in no time, I've almost got the last round on there. But so I'm going to continue doing that. There is one last thing I kind of wanted to sneak peek. It's something that takes a lot of my time that I can't ever show you until it's time for spring market or fall market when we show our fabric collections. But Riley Blake put my next fabric collection on, as in storyboard form, on their website this week, and I've had a lot of you reach out to me and say how you were excited about my new collection coming up that's going to show for spring market. Now again, it's going to be a virtual spring market, and so I'll be doing that next month, where I show you all of my storyboards, show you samples of things I'm doing, show you literally every little thing that's coming But I thought since Riley Blake put it on the website, I can give you a little sneak peek of, so after cookbook, then Prairie's coming. Prairie's coming in July, and we'll be doing all of that, and I've already shown you that in the fall market video. So if you want to see everything that has to do with Prairie, then look here on my channel for my fall market. But this will be next month that I'll be filming, and I'll be filming Calico. So Calico is my collection that I finished a while ago. I work a year or more ahead of time on my fabric, and so this is all ready to go. And so it's called Calico. There's the logo, and so I'm just going to sneak peek 3 of the projects, 3 of the quilts, and then I'll explain more and show you all of the notions, all of the projects, even more fabric, and all of the fabric, you know, actual print-offs of the actual fabrics. But I have designed a So Simple Shape set for this, and it's called the Calico Garden So Simple Shape set for this quilt, because the quilt that we are going to be doing for the sew along is called Calico Garden Quilt. And that's what it looks like. Can you see the whole thing, Cass? That's what it looks like. I'm so excited about it. If you have been following me for a long time, you know that I'm a gardener. I love gardening. I could just like design flower blocks forever. And so I'm super, super excited about it. This one is also close to my heart. I always design fabric from my love of vintage, my love of gardening, my love of my family, and my dad taught me to garden. And I've always had, you know, special memories of that. So there's the Calico Garden Quilt. Super excited about that. This will be piecing and applique. So there's a lot of pieced blocks. This potting shed right here is pieced. But then there's, you know, some applique sitting on it. This garden sign is pieced. The fence is pieced. These blocks, not the flower applique ones in the border, but all these blocks are pieced, and then we just applique a circle in the center. And so there's a lot of piecing going on, but there's a lot of applique. So I love, love, love quilts with both piecing and applique in. So there's one project that's going to be happening with Calico. And this second project is my Calico Birds quilt. This will be in the boxed sets that we do. You know, my big So Simple Shape quilts never come in a boxed kit. You know, they're done on my blog, just like my sew along that I have going on right now. But this one I'm super excited about. Now, I called this collection Calico because it's kind of a spin-off of my Calico Days, but I didn't want to call it Calico Days 2 because I used a lot of the prints from Calico Days, but I used other prints, new prints as well. So now this is Calico Snails runner that comes in the small box as well. So I usually have a box that 5-inch stackers come in, and then a box for 10-inch stackers. And then the yardage, so in the box, you know, the border and everything. Everything comes in the boxed kits for this except for the back. And when you see this print off here, you can see the fabric that I'm using for the back of this, and then it gives the finished size. Super excited about those. So that just kind of gives you a sneak peek of what's going to happen next month during spring market, and when I let you know about that. Okay, so I guess that's kind of showing you some of the things, not everything. I always have a lot of secret sewing that I can't show you, but I always like to show you things that I can. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's not too long for you. I hope it's not too boring for you because, you know, there's no tutorial or anything. I'm just kind of showing you what's been going on. But I have been missing you, and I have been missing filming on a regular basis. And so because so many of you reached out to me, I thought, well, maybe I'll just throw a bunch of stuff together that I've been working on, because you keep asking the same thing, what have you been up to? So I thought, well, here's my what have you been up to? And I thought we could just have a little chat and see what's going on in my sewing room, some of the things. And again, like I said before, I have been cross stitching, but I'll just do a regular floss tube next week and show you what I've been doing with that. But the main portion of what I've been doing is designing deadlines, and then of course for my book that I'm super excited about. And so I've written down everything that I've said that I'm going to put a link to so that I don't forget. And I'm just going to go ahead and link to the book trailer and the little Q&A with Kimberly and I together. That was really fun, where we both showed a lot of the things. And I hope you liked what you saw in the opening of this video, which is kind of a slideshow that Cassidy. Thanks, Cass. You know, I always say thanks to Cassidy after the camera's off, but I want to say thanks to Cassidy, and so many of you are so sweet, and thank her in the comments for filming me, because she's so patient. She does an excellent job, and she's always here to help me. And, you know, she's my daughter, and I love my daughter, and they're our best helpers. So anyway, okay, I got to find some scissors. Anyhow, I'll let you go. I've chatted long enough, and I am glad to be back, and I will see you next week, and I'll chat with you later.